The sound I heard when I walked through those big courthouse doors was laughter. My own daughter, Rebecca, was giggling behind her hand. Her husband, Thomas, was shaking his head like I was some kind of silly child who got lost. They were sitting there looking all fancy in their expensive clothes, pointing at me like I was a joke. Thomas even poked the person sitting next to him and whispered something that made them both laugh harder. If you're watching this story, please click subscribe and tell me what city you're from. So here's what happened. 3 months ago, my husband Daniel died. He was sick for a long time. Before he passed away, he made a special paper that said I would get everything he owned. All his money, all his buildings, all his fancy cars. Everything. Rebecca thought she would get millions and millions of dollars. But Daniel's special paper said something different. Everything goes to his loving wife, Eleanor Mitchell. Not one single penny for our daughter. That's when Rebecca decided something must be wrong with my brain. How could a simple housewife who just cooked and cleaned end up with $40 million? She got fancy lawyers and went to court saying I must have written fake papers. She told everyone I tricked her dying father. The papers her lawyers made said terrible things about me. They said I was a gold digger who fooled an old sick man into giving me all his money. I remember that morning sitting at my kitchen table eating my breakfast. I was reading all the mean things Rebecca wrote about me. My own daughter was taking me to court. She wanted everyone to think my brain didn't work right anymore. She wanted them to take away all the money and give it to her instead. It was so sad it almost made me want to cry. Almost. You see, Rebecca always thought I was just her mom. The lady who made her lunch for school every day. The lady who drove her to dance class. The lady who stayed home while Daddy went to work and made all the money. She never once asked me about my life before I became a mom. She never wondered why I had so many thick books about laws in my office room. She never thought it was strange that important judges sent me Christmas cards every single year. During the meeting before court, Rebecca's lawyer, a man named Mr. Stevens, talked to me like I was a baby. He spoke really slow and loud. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said, "can you tell us how a woman who never went to fancy college and never had a job knows so much about Mr. Mitchell's business?" I just smiled sweetly and told him I was always good with numbers. I let him think whatever he wanted to think. Now sitting in that courtroom watching my daughter smile like she already won, I almost felt bad for what was going to happen next. Rebecca thought she was so smart and ready. She had no idea that her simple housewife mother had been reading law books since before she was even born. The man in the uniform called everyone to be quiet, and Judge Sarah Thompson walked in. The second she looked at me, she stopped walking for just a moment. Our eyes met across the big room, and I saw her remember who I was. Rebecca didn't notice anything. She was too busy whispering to her lawyer about how easy it would be to beat a confused old lady. But I was wrong about one thing that day. Let me take you back to where this whole mess really started. Because the real story began on the day Daniel died, not the day we walked into that courtroom. I was holding his hand when he stopped breathing. I had held that same hand for 30 years of being married. The doctor said he had 6 months to live, but he only made it 3 months. Cancer is a terrible sickness that doesn't care if you're rich or poor. "Eleanor," Daniel whispered right before he died, "they're going to come after you. They think you don't know anything about money or business, but I made sure you'll be safe. Everything is yours, just like we talked about." I kissed his head and promised him I would be okay. Daniel knew me better than anyone in the whole world, even better than our daughter knew me. 2 weeks after Daniel died, everyone came to the lawyer's office to hear what the special paper said. Rebecca arrived wearing all black clothes with tissues ready to wipe her tears. She was pretending to be so sad. Thomas stood next to her, already thinking about all the money they would get. "To my wonderful wife, Eleanor Mitchell," the lawyer read out loud, "I leave everything I own. All my houses, all my money in the bank, all my businesses. Everything worth about $40 million. You could hear a pin drop in that quiet room. Rebecca's tissue box fell on the floor with a thud. "That can't be right," she said with a shaky voice. "Daddy promised me the beach house. He said I would get the business when he died." The lawyer kept reading. "The will is very clear, Mrs. Brooks. Your father left you one family photo and his watch. To your husband, Thomas, he left his golf clubs. I watched my daughter's face change from sad to really, really angry in just seconds. This isn't right. Mom doesn't know the first thing about money. She'll lose everything in 1 year. Thomas's voice was mean and hard. We need to see those papers. This has to be some kind of mistake. But there was no mistake at all. Daniel had been planning this for years and years. Every time Rebecca showed how greedy she was, he changed his will. Like when she borrowed $20,000 to fix her kitchen and never paid us back. Or when she made fun of my cooking at Thomas's work party, calling it poor people food in front of all his fancy friends. Daniel saw how they treated me, how they took me for granted like I was nothing. He knew they thought I was weak and stupid and didn't deserve any respect. After we left the lawyer's office, Rebecca and Thomas followed me to my house. They sat in my living room. The same room where I helped Rebecca with her homework when she was little. The same room where we celebrated when good things happened. The same room where I hugged her when she was sad. Mom, please be reasonable, Rebecca said, using her sweet fake voice now. You can't handle all this money by yourself. Why don't you let Thomas help you? He's really good with money stuff. Thomas nodded his head up and down really fast. We could set up a special account. Make sure everything is taken care of properly. You wouldn't have to worry about any of it. I poured myself some tea with hands that didn't shake at all. Thank you for worrying about me, but I can handle my own business just fine. Are you sure about that? Rebecca's nice mask started to slip away. Mom, you've never even kept track of money in a checkbook. Daddy did everything for you. That's when I knew for certain what they were really planning to do. The lawsuit papers came to my house on a Tuesday morning. A young man who looked embarrassed brought them to my door. Rebecca didn't waste any time at all. I read through all the papers while my coffee got cold and yucky. According to these papers, I had a brain sickness that made me forget things. They said mean people tricked me into writing fake papers about Daniel's will. They said I was dangerous to myself because I made crazy choices with money. The things they said about me were almost impressive because they were so creative and made up. They found receipts from when I got lost driving to Rebecca's house last year. They said this proved my brain was sick. But really, I just got confused because of construction on roads I didn't know. They wrote down that I couldn't use phones or computers because I asked Rebecca's teenager to help me set up Netflix on my TV. The worst thing was Thomas's written promise that I had become scared of everyone and secretive about money. He said I refused their helpful advice about managing Daniel's money. My phone rang within 1 hour of getting those papers. It was Rebecca calling. Mom, I'm so sorry you had to find out this way, she said, but she didn't sound sorry at all. We tried to talk to you like normal people, but you're just not able to handle this big responsibility. I see, I said calmly and quietly. The good news is once the court says you can't think clearly, Thomas and I can take care of everything. You'll have enough money for what you need, and you won't have to worry about all those confusing business things. I watched a beautiful red bird land on my bird feeder outside my window. Daniel used to say red birds brought good luck. And where exactly would I live during all of this? Yes. There was a quiet pause on the phone. Well, the beach house would be perfect for you. It's smaller and easier to take care of. We'd take the main house, of course, since we have more family stuff to do. Of course they would take the big house. Rebecca, do you really believe my brain doesn't work right? Mom, it's not about what I believe. It's about what's real. You married Daddy when you were 25 years old and never had a real job. You don't understand business or laws or how to handle money. This much money is too much for someone like you. Someone like me. As if 30 years of being a wife and mother erased everything I was before. I know you've hired Mr. Stevens to be your lawyer, I said. How did you? She stopped herself. See, this is exactly what I mean. You're becoming scared of everyone and suspicious. It's not healthy, Mom. After we hung up, I sat in Daniel's office room, surrounded by his books and awards. On his desk was a photo from our wedding day. Me in my simple white dress. Him looking at me like I had all the answers in the whole world. Daniel knew this day would come. He tried to warn me that Rebecca and Thomas saw me as weak. They saw our marriage as a business deal where I gave nothing important. I opened the desk drawer and pulled out an envelope Daniel had given me 2 years ago. When they come for you, he had said, and they will come for you, open this. Inside was a small card with a name on it and a note in Daniel's handwriting. Eleanor calls Sarah Thompson. She remembers you. Sarah Thompson, a judge at the Superior Court. The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't remember from where. I decided to visit Rebecca one more time before this legal war started for real. Maybe, just maybe, I could make her understand what she was doing to our family. Their house was everything mine wasn't. Modern, cold, fancy-looking. Rebecca had bought new furniture again since Daniel's funeral, I noticed. New couches, new paintings. All paid for with money they borrowed from us over the years and never paid back. "Mom, what a surprise," Rebecca said, though her voice told me it wasn't a good surprise. "Thomas is at work." Good, I thought. This talk needed to happen between mother and daughter. I sat in their perfect clean living room, taking the coffee she offered more because it's what polite people do. "Rebecca, we need to talk about this lawsuit." "There's nothing to talk about, Mom. You're sick. Even if you can't see it yourself, this court thing is to protect you." "I'm not sick, sweetheart. I'm sad because Daddy died. I'm adjusting to life without him, but my brain works just fine." She sat across from me, her face showing pity and frustration mixed together. "Mom, yesterday you called me asking how to move money between bank accounts. Last week you couldn't figure out how to pay bills on the computer. These aren't normal things for older people." I studied my daughter's face, seeing Daniel's stubborn chin and my own green eyes staring back. When did she become so focused on money instead of love? "Rebecca, what if I told you I've been pretending?" She blinked her eyes in confusion. "Pretending what?" "Pretending to be helpless. Pretending to need help with things I understand perfectly well." For just a moment, I saw doubt flicker across her face. Then she shook her head. "Mom, that doesn't make any sense at all. Why would you pretend to be confused?" "Because people treat you differently when they think you're weak. They tell you things they wouldn't tell someone they thought was strong and smart." Rebecca's laugh was sharp and mean. "A threat. Mom, you're 65 years old. You haven't worked a job in 30 years. What kind of threat could you possibly be?" I stood up, smoothing out my skirt. "The kind you're about to find out about very soon." "What's that supposed to mean?" I stopped at their front door, my hand on the shiny doorknob Daniel had liked when we helped them buy this house. "It means, Rebecca, that you and Thomas have made a very big mistake about who you're dealing with." "Mom, you're scaring me now. This paranoid talk is exactly why we filed the court papers." I turned back to look at her one last time. "I love you, Rebecca. I always will. But I won't let you or anyone else steal what your father worked his entire life to build." Driving home, I felt something I hadn't felt in many years. Not fear or sadness, but excitement. Rebecca thought she was hunting a harmless rabbit, but she was about— Sarah's laugh was exactly the same as it had been 40 years ago. "Eleanor the shark Chen." Confused. "That's hilarious. Do you remember the Williams case? You destroyed 3 expert witnesses in one single afternoon." I did remember. It had been my biggest case before I retired, before I met Daniel, before I became just Mom. "Sarah, I need to ask you something important. Can you fairly hear this case given our history? We were colleagues, not close friends, and it's been decades since we talked." "But Eleanor, if you're planning what I think you're planning." "I'm not planning anything except defending myself against lies. With a lawyer, I hope." I looked at Daniel's photo on my fireplace mantel. "I'll represent myself." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "Eleanor, you've been out of practice for 30 years. Law has changed quite a bit. Are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" "I've kept my license active and current. I've been reading case law and following changes in legal procedure." "Old habits die hard, Sarah. Your daughter's attorney is Mr. Stevens. He's really good. Very experienced in elder law cases. I know. I'd been researching him since receiving the lawsuit papers. He's won 80% of his cases where he tries to prove elderly people can't think clearly. He specializes in families who want to say their elderly relatives are incompetent so they can control their money. You realize what you're walking into. I stood up and walked to my office, surrounded by law books I'd never gotten rid of, case studies I'd written notes in over the years. Sarah, do you remember what Professor Martinez used to say? Never let them see you coming. Exactly right. After we hung up, I spent the evening looking through my old files. Cases I'd won, strategies I'd used, the careful preparation that had made me one of the most feared attorneys on the East Coast. Rebecca thought she was dealing with a helpless widow who didn't understand anything. Tomorrow she'd discover she was facing Eleanor Chen, the woman who never lost a single case in 15 years of practice. The woman who voluntarily walked away from law to raise her daughter, only to have that same daughter try to destroy her. I pulled out a yellow notepad and began making notes. The familiar process of building a defense came back to me like riding a bicycle. Felt natural and right. Rebecca's case depended entirely on everyone believing I couldn't think clearly. But being competent isn't just about age or confusion. It's about understanding what your decisions mean and what will happen because of them. And I understood exactly what I was doing. Mr. Stevens had made one big mistake in his court papers. He painted me as a victim of manipulation, suggesting mysterious people had influenced me to forge Daniel's will. But Daniel's will had been witnessed by 3 people and officially stamped by a notary. The signatures had already been checked by handwriting experts. Everything was real and legal. So where was this alleged forgery everyone kept talking about? I smiled, writing another note on my pad. Mr. Stevens was fishing without bait. He was hoping I'd panic and accept a settlement where they got some money. He was counting on me being overwhelmed by legal procedures, too frightened to fight back. Tomorrow would change absolutely everything. The morning of our first court appearance, I dressed very carefully. I didn't wear fancy designer suits like Rebecca expected. I wore my old navy blue dress with comfortable shoes. Let them think whatever they wanted to think about me. Rebecca and Thomas arrived at the courthouse looking confident and sure of themselves. Mr. Stevens had clearly told them this would be a simple hearing, just a formality before the competency evaluation happened. I sat alone at the defendant's table. No attorney beside me, no briefcase full of documents. Just an old woman with a handbag. Exactly what they expected to see. Judge Thompson entered, and I watched Rebecca's face for any recognition or memory. Nothing. Not a flicker. Sarah had changed over the years too. Her black hair was now silver gray, but her sharp blue eyes were exactly the same as I remembered. Your Honor, Mr. Stevens began, standing with practiced authority and confidence, this is a straightforward case of financial elder abuse and potential fraud. Mrs. Mitchell, the defendant, has been left a substantial inheritance under very questionable circumstances. I listened quietly as he painted his picture of me. Confused, vulnerable, easily manipulated and tricked. According to Mr. Stevens, I had somehow forged my own husband's will despite having no legal knowledge or understanding of estate law whatsoever. The plaintiff requests an immediate competency evaluation and temporary conservatorship to protect Mrs. Mitchell's assets from further mismanagement and loss. Judge Thompson looked directly at me. Mrs. Mitchell, you're representing yourself in this matter? I stood slowly, playing the part they all expected. Yes, Your Honor. I couldn't afford to hire an attorney. Rebecca actually smirked at that comment. I saw it. Do you understand the nature of these proceedings? I believe so, Your Honor. My daughter thinks I'm not smart enough to manage money properly. Mr. Stevens objected immediately. Your Honor, this oversimplifies very serious allegations of mental incompetence and fraud. Sustained. Mrs. Mitchell, do you understand that the court is being asked to determine whether you have the mental capacity to manage your financial affairs? Yes, Your Honor, I understand that completely. And do you wish to contest these allegations? I looked directly at Rebecca for the first time that day. Really looked at her. Yes, Your Honor. I absolutely do. Judge Thompson made some notes on her papers. Mr. Stevens, I've reviewed your petition carefully. You're alleging that Mrs. Mitchell forged her deceased husband's will. Is that correct? Not exactly forged, Your Honor, but was manipulated and tricked into believing she was entitled to an inheritance that should rightfully go to the children. I see. And you have evidence of this manipulation and trickery. Mr. Stevens hesitated just slightly. We believe the evidence will emerge during the competency evaluation, Your Honor. I stood up again. Your Honor, may I ask a question? Judge Thompson nodded her head yes. Mr. Stevens, you claim I was manipulated into forging my husband's will. But the will was properly witnessed by 3 people, officially stamped by a notary, and filed correctly. Are you suggesting the witnesses and notary were also manipulated and tricked? Mr. Stevens looked annoyed at my interruption. Your Honor, Mrs. Mitchell lacks the legal knowledge to understand the complexities of this case. Actually, I said quietly but clearly, I understand perfectly well. You're hoping the court will declare me incompetent based on my age and gender, without any actual evidence of mental incapacity or fraud. Isn't that right, Mr. Stevens? The courtroom went completely silent. You could have heard a feather drop. Rebecca was staring at me with eyes as wide as dinner plates. Thomas grabbed her arm tightly. Furthermore, I continued, feeling more confident with each word, Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 190B, requires clear and convincing evidence of incapacity. You've provided character testimony and speculation and guesses, but no medical evidence, no psychological evaluation, no concrete proof of any kind whatsoever. Mr. Stevens jumped to his feet. Objection, Your Honor. Mrs. Mitchell is clearly being coached by someone. Judge Thompson raised one eyebrow. By whom, Mr. Stevens? She's representing herself. There's nobody coaching her. That's when I decided to stop pretending and acting. I straightened my shoulders and let 30 years of careful pretense fall away like an old winter coat I didn't need anymore. Your Honor, I'd like to present my credentials to the court. I reached into my handbag and pulled out my Massachusetts Bar Association card. Current and valid and active. Eleanor Chen Mitchell, member of the Massachusetts Bar since 1982. License number 847293. Currently active and in good standing. The silence in that courtroom was so complete you could hear people breathing. Rebecca's mouth fell open wide. Thomas grabbed her arm even tighter, whispering frantically in her ear. Mr. Stevens looked like someone had slapped him across the face. Judge Thompson examined my credentials with a carefully neutral expression on her face. Mrs. Mitchell, why didn't you mention your legal background earlier in these proceedings? Because, Your Honor, I wanted to see exactly what accusations Mr. Stevens would make against someone he assumed was legally ignorant and uneducated. I turned to face Mr. Stevens directly, looking him right in the eyes. You've spent the last 20 minutes arguing that I lack the mental capacity to understand simple financial matters. Yet you never bothered to research my background or check my credentials. You just assumed. Mr. Stevens found his voice, though it shook slightly. Your Honor, this changes absolutely nothing. Mrs. Mitchell hasn't practiced law in decades. She's clearly been manipulated by someone. By whom? I asked calmly. My dead husband. You keep mentioning these mysterious manipulators and puppet masters, but you've never identified a single one of them. I walked to the center of the courtroom, feeling the familiar confidence return like an old friend coming home. Your Honor, I practiced criminal defense law for 15 years. I specialized in complex fraud cases. I understand estate planning, trust law, and financial management better than most people in this room, including Mr. Stevens. Rebecca finally spoke, her voice shaky and uncertain. Mom, you never told me you were a lawyer. You never said anything. I looked at my daughter with a mixture of sadness and disappointment swirling in my heart. You never asked, Rebecca. In 30 years of being your mother, you never once asked about my life before I married your father. Not once. Mr. Stevens was scrambling now, flipping through papers frantically. Your Honor, regardless of Mrs. Mitchell's past career, the evidence clearly shows recent signs of mental decline and confusion. What evidence? Challenged him. That I asked my granddaughter to help me with Netflix. That I got lost driving to Rebecca's house during major road construction. Mr. Stevens, if technical difficulties and navigation problems indicate dementia and brain disease, half the population over 50 years old should be declared incompetent. Judge Thompson leaned forward in her chair. Mr. Stevens, do you have any actual medical evidence of mental incapacity? Any doctor's reports? Any psychological evaluations? We request a full neurological evaluation, Your Honor. Based on what specific medical grounds? Mr. Stevens shuffled his papers desperately, clearly unprepared for this turn of events. Based on behavioral observations from concerned family members. I almost laughed out loud. Your Honor, my daughter observed me asking for help with tasks I was perfectly capable of handling myself. I wanted to see how they'd treat someone they perceived as helpless and weak. I was conducting an experiment. And what did you discover, Mrs. Mitchell? I looked directly at Rebecca, seeing the hurt and confusion in her eyes, but also seeing the greed that had brought us here. I discovered that my own daughter views me as an obstacle to her inheritance, not as a person deserving of basic respect and dignity. Mr. Stevens made one last desperate attempt. Thomas was pacing back and forth like a caged animal, his phone pressed to his ear. I caught little pieces of his conversation drifting through the door. Much more complicated than we thought, and need to completely reassess our position. They'd built their entire case on the assumption that I was a simple housewife who'd somehow stumbled into wealth through dumb luck. Now they were scrambling desperately to understand who they were really dealing with. Mr. Stevens approached me during the break, his earlier confidence replaced by cautious respect. Mrs. Mitchell, perhaps we could discuss a settlement agreement. What kind of settlement, Mr. Stevens? Your daughter is willing to withdraw the competency petition in exchange for a more equitable distribution of the estate assets. I almost smiled at his carefully chosen words. You mean Rebecca wants her inheritance after all? Mrs. Mitchell, surely you understand your daughter's position. She expected to inherit something significant from her father. It's only natural. Mr. Stevens, my daughter inherited something invaluable from her father. A loving family, an excellent education paid for completely, and every opportunity to succeed in life. The fact that she chose to take those gifts for granted doesn't automatically entitle her to his money. But $40 million is a substantial sum for one person to manage alone, especially someone your age. Are you questioning my mental capacity again, Mr. Stevens? Because I should warn you, that approach didn't work out very well for you in there. Mr. Stevens's professional mask slipped slightly, showing frustration underneath. Mrs. Mitchell, I'll be completely frank with you. My clients are reconsidering their approach to this matter. They'd strongly prefer to resolve this privately, outside of court. I'm absolutely sure they would prefer that. I gathered my purse, preparing to return to the courtroom. But we're past the point of private resolution now. Your clients made this public when they filed papers claiming I was mentally incompetent and dangerous. Now they can face the full consequences of their accusations. Mrs. Mitchell, please be reasonable. I am being reasonable, Mr. Stevens. Reason is exactly what I'm using. Good day. When court came back into session, Mr. Stevens requested a continuance to reassess the evidence and rebuild his case. Judge Thompson denied the request firmly. Mr. Stevens, you filed this petition claiming urgency due to Mrs. Mitchell's alleged immediate mental state and danger to herself. You can't now claim you need more time to build your case from scratch. Rebecca took the witness stand as their primary witness, and I watched my daughter struggle internally to reconcile the mother she thought she knew with the woman who had just completely outmaneuvered her expensive attorney. Mrs. Brooks, Mr. Stevens began carefully, please describe your mother's behavior following your father's death. Rebecca's voice was uncertain now, wavering. She seemed confused about financial matters. Really confused. She asked me questions about banking, about investments, about how to do basic things. Did these questions concern you at the time? At the time, yes, very much. But now I'm wondering if... She trailed off, looking directly at me with questioning eyes. If what, Mrs. Brooks? Please complete your thought. If she was testing me somehow. Testing how I would respond. Mr. Stevens looked like he wanted to object to his own witness's testimony. Mrs. Brooks, do you still believe your mother lacks the capacity to manage her financial affairs properly? Rebecca was quiet for what felt like a very long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I honestly don't know anymore. I don't know anything anymore. The foundation of their entire case was crumbling in real time, like a sandcastle being washed away by waves. That evening Rebecca called me at home. Her voice was completely different now. Smaller, younger, vulnerable. Like the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, seeking comfort and safety. Mom, we need to talk. Please. I'm listening, sweetheart. Why didn't you ever tell me you were a lawyer? Why didn't you tell me about your career and your life before me? I sat in Daniel's office, surrounded by law books I'd never had the heart to donate or throw away. Because when you were born, you became more important than any career could ever be. I wanted to be your mother, not your lawyer. I made that choice freely. But you gave up everything for me. Everything you worked so hard for. No, sweetheart. I didn't give up anything. Chose you. There's a very big difference between giving up and choosing. Rebecca was crying now, really crying. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry too, Rebecca. Thomas said. He said you didn't understand money. He said you'd lose everything Dad worked for. He convinced me you needed our help. And you believed him because you wanted to believe him. It was easier to think I was incompetent than to consider that your father made a conscious, deliberate choice. Why didn't Dad leave me anything? What did I do that was so wrong? The pain in her voice genuinely broke my heart. But she needed to hear the complete truth. Rebecca, your father loved you deeply and completely. But he also saw very clearly how you and Thomas treated money. You borrowed without ever paying back. You spent without considering consequences or tomorrow. He knew that giving you millions of dollars would only enable and encourage that destructive behavior. So he punished me by giving it all to you instead. He trusted me to make the right decisions about our family's future, including decisions about you and Thomas and what's truly best for you. There was a long pause on the phone line. What does that mean exactly? It means the money was never the point of any of this, Rebecca. The point was teaching you that love isn't measured in dollars and cents, and respect isn't optional just because someone appears vulnerable or weak. Mom, can we fix this? Can we drop the lawsuit and start over fresh? I closed my eyes, feeling suddenly very tired and old. Rebecca, tomorrow morning Thomas is going to ask you to continue fighting this battle. He's going to convince you that I manipulated this whole situation on purpose, that I made you look foolish intentionally. He's going to twist everything that happened today. How do you know that? How can you be so sure? Because I've been watching him very carefully for 7 years of your marriage to my daughter. Thomas sees dollar signs when he looks at our family, not people, not love, just money. The question is, what are you going to choose? The next morning brought a genuine surprise I hadn't expected. Instead of Rebecca and Thomas arriving together as a united front, Rebecca came alone. She looked absolutely exhausted, like she hadn't slept at all the previous night. Thomas, arrived 20 minutes later with a completely different lawyer. Someone younger, more aggressive-looking, with an expensive suit. He'd escalated the fight instead of backing down. The new attorney, a man named David Park, immediately requested a private sidebar conversation with Judge Thompson. I couldn't hear what they were discussing, but Mr. Stevens looked very uncomfortable, and Mr. Park was gesturing wildly with his hands. When they returned to their positions, Mr. Park had developed an entirely new strategy for attacking me. Your Honor, we're amending our petition significantly. We now allege that Mrs. Mitchell deliberately deceived her family about her mental state specifically to manipulate them into filing this lawsuit, thereby proving she's unfit to manage a substantial estate responsibly. It was actually quite clever in a twisted, devious way. Instead of claiming I was incompetent and confused, they were now claiming I was too manipulative and deceitful. Judge Thompson looked genuinely skeptical of this new approach. Mr. Park, you're arguing that Mrs. Mitchell is simultaneously mentally unfit to manage money and mentally cunning enough to orchestrate an elaborate legal trap? Those seem contradictory. We're arguing that her behavior demonstrates a concerning disconnect from reality and healthy family relationships, Your Honor. This proves mental instability. Your Honor, I stood up calmly. May I respond to this creative new theory? Proceed, Mrs. Mitchell. Mr. Park seems to be arguing that defending myself against false accusations proves I'm unfit to defend myself. This is circular logic at its absolute finest. Mr. Park shot back quickly. Mrs. Mitchell deliberately misled her family about her capabilities, then used their natural concern against them in court. Natural concern. I let my voice carry clearly across the courtroom. Mr. Park, my daughter and son-in-law didn't express concern for my well-being or health. They expressed concern for their inheritance money. There's a very significant difference. I turned to face Rebecca directly, seeing her flinch at my words. If Rebecca had called and said, "Mom, I'm worried about you. Can we schedule a doctor's appointment?" that would be genuine concern. If she'd said, "Mom, let me help you organize your finances so you're not stressed," that would be loving support. Instead, she filed legal papers claiming I was mentally incompetent without ever talking to my doctor, my friends, or anyone else who interacts with me regularly and would know the truth. Judge Thompson nodded slightly in agreement. Mr. Park, do you have any medical evidence whatsoever supporting claims of mental unfitness or instability? We have family testimony about very concerning behaviors, Your Honor. Behaviors that Mrs. Mitchell has now explained as deliberate tests of her family's character and true intentions. Mr. Park was losing ground rapidly. Your Honor, Mrs. Mitchell's own testimony proves she's manipulative, deceptive, and mentally unstable. Or intelligent, cautious, and protecting herself, Judge Thompson replied dryly. I could see the exact moment Mr. Park realized his new strategy was backfiring completely. Rebecca was staring at the floor looking miserable. Thomas's face was bright red with barely controlled anger. That's when everything changed direction. Your Honor, I said, standing slowly and deliberately. I'd like to present additional evidence to the court. I reached into my handbag and pulled out a thick manila folder I'd been saving specifically for this moment. These are financial records showing every single penny Rebecca and Thomas have borrowed from my husband and me over the past 7 years. Mr. Park jumped up immediately. Objection, Your Honor. This evidence wasn't disclosed during discovery proceedings. Mr. Park, Judge Thompson said with barely hidden amusement in her voice, Mrs. Mitchell is representing herself as a pro se litigant. The rules of evidence are somewhat relaxed for self-represented parties, especially when responding to amended petitions filed on the actual day of trial. I handed copies to the court clerk, who distributed them appropriately. Your Honor, these records show a clear pattern of financial dependence totaling over $200,000. None of it was ever repaid despite multiple promises. Rebecca's face went completely white, drained of all color. Thomas grabbed her arm hard, whispering urgently and angrily in her ear. Furthermore, I continued steadily, I have here a recording of a conversation between Rebecca and Thomas from last month. They were discussing their specific plans to have me declared incompetent so they could finally get control of Mom's money. Their exact words. The courtroom erupted into chaos. Mr. Park was shouting objections. Thomas was on his feet yelling. Rebecca looked like she might actually faint. Judge Thompson banged her gavel hard multiple times. Order. Order in this court. Mr. Park, I'll hear your objection now. Your Honor, this recording was obtained without proper consent. It's completely inadmissible evidence. I smiled calmly. Actually, Mr. Park, Massachusetts is a one-party consent state for recordings. Since the conversation took place in my home with my knowledge and consent, it's perfectly admissible under state law. Your Honor, Mr. Park tried desperately. This is clearly a setup and entrapment. Yes, I agreed pleasantly. It absolutely was a setup. I set up a situation where my daughter and son-in-law revealed their true motivations and intentions, just like I set up their assumptions about my mental capacity to reveal their prejudices and greed. I make no apologies for protecting myself. Judge Thompson leaned forward with interest. Mrs. Mitchell, did you plan this entire scenario from the beginning? Your Honor, I knew Rebecca and Thomas would eventually challenge my inheritance. My husband Daniel warned me explicitly they would. So yes, I prepared carefully for this possibility. I documented everything, kept records. I protected myself. I looked directly at Rebecca, who was crying openly now. I hoped desperately I was wrong about you, sweetheart. I hoped you'd prove me wrong and show me the daughter I raised. But you didn't. Judge Thompson spent several minutes reviewing the financial records carefully and listening to key portions of the recording. When she was finished, her expression was stern and serious. Mr. Park, I'm denying your petition in its entirety. Mrs. Mitchell has demonstrated exceptional mental acuity, sharp legal knowledge, and careful planning. More importantly, she's exposed the true motivation behind this lawsuit clearly. She turned to address Patricia and Michael directly. I mean Rebecca and Thomas jumped up angrily. Your Honor, we were genuinely concerned about Mrs. Mitchell's mental state. This is completely unfair. Judge Thompson's expression could have frozen boiling water instantly. Mr. Brooks, I've just listened to a recording of you saying, and I quote exactly, once the old bat is declared incompetent, we can finally live the lifestyle we deserve and take some real vacations. End quote. The courtroom was dead silent. You could hear hearts beating. Mrs. Mitchell, Judge Thompson continued formally, not only are you competent to manage your affairs, you're one of the most competent individuals I've encountered in this courtroom in my 20 years on the bench. Case dismissed with prejudice. As Rebecca and Thomas left with their lawyers, Rebecca turned back once, just once. Her eyes were red from crying. Mom, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I nodded slowly. I know you are, sweetheart. But sorry isn't enough anymore. Sorry doesn't undo the damage or rebuild trust. 6 months later, I sold the big house that held too many memories. I moved to a small cottage by the ocean where I can hear waves every morning. Rebecca calls sometimes, and we're slowly, carefully rebuilding our relationship on completely new terms. Terms that include honesty, mutual respect, and firm boundaries. I donated half of Daniel's money to legal aid organizations that help elderly people fight against financial abuse and exploitation. The irony of that wasn't lost on me at all. The other half. Well, that's funding a very comfortable retirement for a woman who spent 30 years pretending to be helpless, only to discover she was stronger and smarter than she ever imagined possible. Some days Rebecca and I meet for coffee at a little shop near my cottage. We don't talk about the lawsuit or the money or what happened in that courtroom. Instead, we talk about her childhood, about Daniel, about the good memories we shared as a family. Last week, she asked me about my law career for the first time ever. What made you give it up, Mom? You were so good at it. I watched the ocean waves through the window, thinking carefully about my answer. You did, sweetheart. When I held you as a tiny baby, I realized I wanted to be there for every moment of your life. I wanted to be the one who kissed your scraped knees, who helped with homework, who listened to your teenage heartbreaks. I didn't want to miss any of it. But you could have had both. Career and family. Other women do. Maybe, I admitted. But I didn't want both. I wanted you. That was my choice, and I've never regretted it. Not for one single second. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. Even now. After everything I did to you. I reached across the table and took her hand gently. Especially now. Because everything that happened taught you something important about life, about family, and about what really matters. What's that, Mom? That love isn't measured in money or inheritances. It's measured in respect, trust, and being there for each other even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. Thomas and Rebecca are separated now. She moved into a small apartment and got a job working at a local bookstore. She says it doesn't pay much, but she likes it. She likes earning her own money and not depending on anyone else. I'm proud of her for that. Really proud. Last month, she brought her daughter Emma to visit me at the cottage. Emma is 7 years old with Rebecca's eyes and Daniel's smile. We built sandcastles on the beach while Rebecca watched from the porch. Grandma, Emma asked while patting wet sand into a bucket. Mommy says you used to be a really important lawyer. Is that true? I smiled at my granddaughter. A long time ago, yes. Why did you stop? Because I wanted to be your mommy's mommy more than I wanted to be a lawyer. Emma thought about this seriously. That was nice of you. I thought so too. Grandma, Mommy cries sometimes at night. She thinks I don't hear, but I do. My heart aches. I know, sweetheart. Your mommy is learning some hard lessons about life. But she's going to be okay. We're all going to be okay. Emma looked up at me with those wise young eyes. Because you forgave her. Because family is complicated but love is simple. And love is stronger than mistakes. That evening, after Rebecca and Emma left, I sat on my porch watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. My phone rang. It was Sarah Thompson. Judge Thompson. Eleanor, I wanted to call and tell you something. What's that, Sarah? I've been thinking about your case a lot. About what you did in that courtroom. Having regrets about your ruling. I asked with a smile in my voice. No, not at all. You were brilliant, Eleanor. Just like the old days. But I've been thinking about something else. What? About why you really pretended to be helpless. It wasn't just to test Rebecca, was it? I was quiet for a moment. No, it wasn't just that. You wanted to see if she'd love you even when she thought you had nothing to offer. Even when she thought you were weak and confused and incompetent. Yes, I admitted softly. I wanted to know if she loved me for who I am, or for what I could give her. Daniel always said people show their true selves when they think you're vulnerable. And she failed that test. Yes, she did. But she's learning now. Slowly. She's becoming the person I always hoped she'd be. Eleanor, what you did took tremendous courage. And tremendous love. You gave her a gift. Even though it hurt both of you. What gift is that? The gift of truth. The gift of seeing herself clearly. Without pretense or illusion. That's the most valuable thing a parent can give a child. After we hung up, I thought about Sarah's words. She was right. Everything that happened in that courtroom was painful and difficult and heartbreaking. But it was also necessary. Sometimes love means letting people face consequences. Sometimes love means saying no. Sometimes love means showing someone who they've become so they can choose to be better. Daniel knew that. He tried to tell Rebecca through his will. But she wasn't ready to hear it from him. She needed to hear it from me in a courtroom, where she couldn't ignore the truth anymore. This morning I received a letter in the mail. Rebecca's handwriting on the envelope. Inside was a simple note. Dear Mom, I'm going back to school. I'm studying to be a social worker. I want to help families stay together, help them communicate, help them love each other better. I'm doing this because of you. 'Cause you showed me what real strength looks like. It's not money or power or winning. It's knowing who you are and standing firm in that truth, even when everyone underestimates you. Thank you for being strong enough to let me fail. Thank you for being wise enough to let me learn. And thank you for loving me enough to never give up on me, even when I gave up on myself. I love you, Mom. Always. Rebecca. I read that letter 3 times, tears running down my face. Then I walked down to the beach and let the ocean wind dry my tears. Somewhere out there Daniel was watching. Somewhere out there he was smiling. He'd been right about everything. About Rebecca. About Thomas. About the lawsuit. About what I needed to do. I did it, I whispered to the wind. I protected what you built. I protected our family. And I protected our daughter from herself. The waves crashed against the shore in their eternal rhythm. And for the first time since Daniel died, I felt truly at peace. This is Eleanor Mitchell, and this is my story. Thanks for listening to Granny's Voice. Don't forget to subscribe and share your own story in the comments below. Your voice matters too.